I recognized his hands before I recognized his face. That sounds like a line from a bad novel. The kind I used to devour when I was 19 and thought love was a thunderstorm that either drowned you or watered your soul. But standing there, near the buffet table of a wedding reception that was just a little too loud and a little too crowded, it was the only truth I had. He was reaching for a glass of champagne. It was a simple gesture. His fingers were long, the knuckles slightly prominent. There was a silver watch on his left wrist, loose enough to slide just a fraction of an inch when he moved. I knew the geometry of those hands. I knew how they looked when they were clenched in frustration over a thesis paper in a cramped dormitory room. I knew how they felt when they were tangled in my hair on a rainy Tuesday morning when we should have been in class. I held my breath. It wasn't a dramatic gasp. It was a quiet suspension of air, a sudden pause in the rhythm of my own body. 25 years. That is a quarter of a century. It is enough time to pay off a mortgage. It is enough time to raise a child and send them off into the world. It is enough time for cells to regenerate, for skin to lose its elasticity, for hair to turn the color of steel, for entire cities to change their skylines. And yet, looking at that hand reaching for the crystal flute, the 25 years collapsed like an accordion. They folded in on themselves until there was no distance at all. Just me, and him, and the terrifying realization that some things do not fade. They just hibernate. I took a sip of my own drink. It was sparkling water with a twist of lime, because I was driving, and because at 48, wine makes me sleepy before the dancing even starts. The bubbles felt sharp against my tongue. Grounding. "You look like you've seen a ghost," a voice said beside me. It was Sarah, the bride's mother and my oldest friend. She was flushed, happy, and slightly tipsy. "Maybe I have," I said, trying to keep my voice light. I nodded toward the bar. "Is that David?" Sarah squinted, adjusting her glasses. "Oh, yes. Can you believe it? He's the groom's uncle. Or step-uncle. The family tree is a bit tangled on that side. I didn't think he'd actually come. He lives in London now, I think. Or maybe Zurich." "London," I said automatically. The word slipped out before I could check it. Sarah looked at me, eyebrows raised. I think I heard that somewhere." I lied. I hadn't heard it. It was just a guess, but it felt right. He always loved the rain. He always loved places that felt older than they were. "Are you okay, Elena?" Sarah asked, her voice dropping an octave, losing its manic hostess energy. She knew. Of course she knew. She was the one who had brought me ice cream and cheap rental movies for 3 weeks, straight after he left. "I'm fine," I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it. "Really. It's just strange. It's been a long time." "You don't have to talk to him," she said fiercely, protectively. I smiled at her. "Sarah, we aren't 20 anymore. There's no bad blood, just old blood." "Old blood," she repeated, snorting. "Sounds sanitary. Go mingle," I told her, gently pushing her toward a group of elderly aunts who looked like they needed attending to. "I'm fine. Truly." She squeezed my arm and fluttered away in her silver sequin dress. I was alone again. I turned back to the bar. He had turned around. The shock wasn't that he had aged. We all have. The shock was how well the years sat on him. His hair was gray, a true charcoal gray, cut shorter than he used to wear it. He wore a dark blue suit that fit him perfectly. David never could stand ill-fitting clothes. There were lines around his eyes, deep grooves that suggested he spent a lot of time squinting at the sun, or perhaps laughing. I hoped it was laughing. He took a sip of his champagne and scanned the room. His eyes were the same, a startling, clear hazel, green and brown and gold all at once. And then, inevitably, his gaze landed on me. I didn't look away. I couldn't. It felt childish to pretend I hadn't seen him. We were adults. We were survivors of our own histories. I saw the recognition hit him. It wasn't a spark. It was a physical jolt. He stopped mid-sip. He lowered the glass slowly. He didn't smile, not at first. He just looked. He looked at me with an intensity that made the noise of the wedding reception, the clatter of silverware, the generic jazz band, the laughter, fade into a dull hum. He said something to the person standing next to him, a polite dismissal, and then he began to walk toward me. My heart didn't race. It didn't pound against my ribs like a trapped bird. Instead, it felt heavy, full. It beat with a slow, deliberate thud. Here. Ease. I smoothed the fabric of my dress. It was a deep emerald green silk. I knew I looked good. I had earned the confidence I carried now. I wasn't the skinny, anxious girl who bit her fingernails and apologized for taking up space. I was a woman who owned her own business, who had raised a brilliant daughter, who had buried a husband she loved dearly, and who had learned to be happy in the quiet moments. But as David walked toward me, weaving through the crowd, a layer of that confidence peeled away. I remembered the last time I saw him. The airport terminal. The fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. The way he hadn't cried, but his jaw was set so tight, I thought his teeth might shatter. The way I had promised to write. The way he had promised to wait. We were such liars. We didn't mean to be. We just didn't know yet how big the world was, and how small our promises were in comparison to time. He stopped 2 feet away from me. He didn't encroach on my space. He respected the boundary of the years. Elena, he said. His voice was deeper, richer. It had a texture to it now, like worn leather. David, I replied. My voice was steady. Thank God. He paused, shaking his head slightly, a small, incredulous smile touching his lips. I was just thinking about you. That sounds like a lie, but it isn't. I was looking at the centerpiece on the table. Those lilies, and I remembered you are allergic to them. I laughed. A genuine, surprised laugh. I am. I've been sneezing for the last hour. Some things don't change, he said softly. And some things do, I countered, gesturing to his gray hair, then to mine. It suits you, he said. He looked at me, really looked at me, from the silver streaks in my hair to the shoes I was wearing. You look settled. In a good way. I am, I said. And you? Sarah thinks you're in London. Sarah is right for once. He smiled. Architectural firm. I restore old buildings. Drafty Victorians, mostly. Of course you do, I said. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had always wanted to fix broken things. Back then, he had tried to fix me. It hadn't worked, but the effort had been sweet. Can we? He gestured toward the French doors that led to the garden. The band was starting up a cover of a Motown song, and the bass was thumping a little too aggressively. Can we get some air? Unless you're waiting for someone. He glanced at my left hand. It was bare, I had taken off my wedding ring 3 years after Mark died. It felt right. Mark wouldn't have wanted me to carry the weight of a ghost forever. No, I said. I'm not waiting for anyone. Fresh air sounds perfect. We walked out together. The night air was cool, smelling of damp earth and falling leaves. It was late September. The season of change. The season of ending. We walked in silence for a moment, moving away from the light of the venue and onto the stone path that wound through the vineyard. The grapevines were heavy, dark shapes in the moonlight. "How long has it been?" he asked, though I knew he knew. 25 years, I said. May 17th. He stopped walking. He turned to me, his hands in his pockets. "You remember the date." "I remember the date I got my wisdom teeth out, too," I teased, trying to deflect the weight of it. "I have a mind for trivia." He didn't laugh. "I remember it too. It rained. My flight was delayed 3 hours. I almost turned around and came back to your dorm. Why didn't you?" I asked. It was the question I had asked the ceiling of my bedroom for a year after he left. "Because I knew if I came back, I'd never leave," he said simply. "And you needed to grow. And I needed to go." It was the truth. It was the brutal, unvarnished truth that we couldn't admit back then. We were consuming each other. Our love was a wildfire. Spectacular, bright, hot enough to burn down everything around us. We had no friends, no hobbies, no grades. We just had each other. It wasn't sustainable. It was an addiction. "You were right," I said. The words tasted bittersweet. We would have destroyed each other. "I don't know about destroyed," he said, looking up at the moon. "But we wouldn't be who we are now." "And who are you now, David?" I asked. He sighed, a long exhale that seemed to carry the weight of the last 2 decades. "I'm a man who restores old houses. I'm divorced. Twice. I have a golden retriever named Buster, who is the longest relationship I've managed to sustain. I drink too much coffee. I read historical biographies. And I think about a girl I knew in college more often than is probably healthy for a 50-year-old man." My breath hitched. He wasn't playing games. We were too old for games. "I'm a widow," I said. I wanted to give him my truth in return. His name was Mark. He was a good man, steady, kind. He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. It was quick. David's face softened. He took a step closer, but didn't touch me. "I'm sorry, Elena. Truly." "Were you happy?" "Yes," I said. And I was. It was a different kind of happiness than what I had with David. It wasn't a wildfire. It was a hearth. It was warm, consistent, safe. We had a daughter, Sophie. She's 22. She's studying art history in Florence right now. Art history. David chuckled. "She gets that from you. You used to drag me to every museum in a 50-mile radius." "I did." I smiled. "And you complained the whole time. But you always bought the postcards." "I still have them," he said. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was vibrating. The air between us was charged with the electricity of unspent potential. "Why didn't you write?" I asked. "You promised." "I wrote," he said. "Every day for 6 months. I wrote letters, pages and pages of them. I never got them. I never sent them." He admitted. He looked down at his shoes. "I was afraid, Elena. I was in London, alone, trying to figure out who I was without you. Every time I wrote a letter, it felt like I was reaching back into the past. I thought if I cut the cord completely, it would heal faster. For both of us. The clean break. I nodded. Surgical. It wasn't clean, he said darkly. It was a jagged mess. But I thought I was being noble. Stupid, 20-year-old nobility. I hated you for a while. I told him. I waited for the mail every day. When it didn't come, I felt like I was disappearing. I know, he said. I felt it too. I'm sorry. Don't be, I said. I reached out and touched his forearm. The fabric of his suit was soft. Beneath it, his arm was warm. We lived. That's the point, isn't it? We survived. He looked down at my hand on his arm. He covered it with his own. His skin was rougher than I remembered, calloused from work. We did, he said. But God, Elena, seeing you. It's like walking into a room I haven't been in for years, and realizing all the furniture's is exactly where I left it. We stood there in the vineyard, the music from the wedding fading into the background. The years were stripping away. I wasn't a widow. He wasn't a divorcee. We were just David and Elena, standing in the dark, trying to figure out why the universe had decided to collide our orbits one more time. We found a bench near a small stone fountain. The water trickled over the edge with a soothing, repetitive sound. The air was getting colder, a true autumn chill, but neither of us suggested going back inside. The warmth of the reception hall felt artificial compared to the cold clarity of the garden. David sat with his elbows on his knees, leaning forward, his hands clasped. I sat back, watching him. Tell me about Mark, he said. It wasn't a jealous question. It was a curious one. He wanted to know the shape of the life I had lived without him. He was an accountant, I said, smiling at the contrast. David, the artist, the dreamer. Mark, the pragmatist. He loved order. He loved spreadsheets. He made me feel safe. When I met him, 3 years after you left, I was still frantic. I was trying so hard to didn't need anyone. Mark didn't try to fix me. He just stood next to me until I stopped shaking. David nodded slowly. He sounds like exactly what you needed. He was, I said. We had a good life, quiet. We traveled a bit. We raised Sophie. We fought about money sometimes, and about whose turn it was to do the dishes, but there was never any drama. No slamming doors. No driving off into the night. Unlike us, David said dryly. Unlike us, I agreed. Do you remember the time we fought, because I didn't like that movie you were obsessed with? Blade Runner. David threw his head back and laughed. God, yes. I accused you of having no soul. I was so pretentious. You packed a bag, I reminded him. You literally packed a duffel bag and threatened to sleep in the library. I was an idiot, he said, wiping a tear from his eye. But I loved you so much it made me crazy. I didn't know how to handle the intensity of it. Everything felt life or death. That's what first love is, I said. It's practice. It's learning that you can burn without turning to ash. And your wives? I asked. Tell me about them. He winced slightly. Claire was first. We met in grad school. She was brilliant, ambitious. We were a power couple. We looked great on paper, but we were both so focused on our careers. We just drifted. One day we woke up and realized we hadn't had a real conversation in 6 months. It was amicable. And the second, Julia, he said, and his voice dropped. That was harder. She was younger, vivacious. I think I was trying to recapture something. Maybe I was trying to find you in her, the spontaneity, the fire. But you can't cast people in roles they didn't audition for. It wasn't fair to her. We lasted 4 years. It ended badly. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. It taught me that you can't go back, he said, turning to look at me. Or at least, I thought you couldn't. The wind picked up, blowing a stray lock of hair across my face. David reached out and tucked it behind my ear. His fingers lingered on my cheekbone. His touch was electric, familiar, terrifying. You have no idea how often I've thought about this, he whispered. Just sitting with you, talking. Not fighting, not crying. Just being. I've thought about it too, I admitted. Especially after Mark died. When the grief started to settle, and I started to look at the future, I wondered where you were. I almost looked you up on Facebook a dozen times. Why didn't you? Fear, I said honestly. Fear that you'd be happy and wouldn't remember me. Or fear that you'd be unhappy and I'd want to save you. Or fear that you'd be exactly the same, and I'd fall in love with you all over again and ruin the peace I've built. He traced the line of my jaw with his thumb. And now? Are you afraid now? Yes, I said, terrified. He leaned in. It was a slow, deliberate movement. He was giving me every chance to pull away. I could have turned my head. I could have stood up. I could have made a joke. I didn't do any of those things. I closed my eyes. When his lips touched mine, it wasn't an explosion. It wasn't the fireworks of our youth. It was something better. It was a homecoming. It tasted like champagne and memory. It was soft, tentative, and deeply, achingly tender. It was a kiss that contained 25 years of silence. It held the apologies we never made, the letters he never sent, the tears I cried into my pillow. It was a bridge built across a canyon of time. He pulled back just an inch, his forehead resting against mine. We were both breathing unsteadily. Elena, he breathed. I know, I whispered. I shouldn't have done that, he said, but he didn't move away. Probably not, I agreed. But I'm glad you did. We sat there for a long time, just holding on to that moment. The realization was settling in, heavy and complex. The spark was still there. The chemistry was undeniable. But we were not the same people. I thought about my life back in the city. My floral shop that opened at 8 a.m. My yoga class on Tuesdays. My daughter calling me on FaceTime to show me a painting. My quiet, orderly, contented life. I looked at David. He lived in London. He restored castles. He had a dog. He had a life that didn't fit into mine, and mine didn't fit into his. What do we do with this? He asked, voicing the question that was screaming in my head. I don't know, I said. I fly back to London on Tuesday, he said. I have a project starting. A manor house in the Cotswolds. It's going to take 2 years. I can't leave, I said immediately. My business. My mother is getting older. Sophie comes home for holidays. My life is here. I know, he said. He sounded resigned but not surprised. I wouldn't ask you to leave it. I know what it costs to build a life. So, I said, a sad smile touching my lips, we are at an impasse. Again, not an impasse, he corrected. A reality. He took my hand and kissed the knuckles. We aren't 20 anymore, Elena. We can't just throw everything in a bag and run away. We have responsibilities. We have roots. Roots are good, I said. They keep you standing in a storm. They do, he agreed. But they also keep you from flying. I don't need to fly anymore. David, I said softly. I like the ground. It's solid. He looked at me with a mixture of admiration and sadness. You've grown up. We both have. We sat in silence again, but this time it was a mourning silence. We were grieving the possibility of us for the second time. The first time, we grieved the loss of the future we thought we were owed. This time, we were grieving the loss of a fantasy. The fantasy that love is enough to conquer logistics, geography, and history. I still love you, he said. It wasn't a demand. It was a statement of fact, like saying the sky is dark. I think a part of me always will. You're woven into my DNA, Elena. I love you too, I said, and I did. I loved him for the boy he was, and for the man he had become. I loved him for the way he looked at me, like I was the only mystery he ever wanted to solve. But, he asked. But I love my life more, I said. It was the bravest thing I had ever said. I love who I am when I'm not with you. I love the peace I've found. With you. It's beautiful. David, it's intense, but it's turbulence. And I'm done with turbulence. He nodded slowly. He understood. Of course he understood. He was the one who had left 25 years ago because the turbulence was too much. So this is it? He asked. One night. One conversation. One kiss. It has to be, I said. If we try to force this, if we try to do long distance, or emails, or visits, we'll ruin it. We'll turn this beautiful memory into something ugly and resentful. We'll start expecting things the other can't give. You're wise, he said. I'm old. I laughed. There's a difference. No, he said seriously. You're wise. We stayed on that bench for another hour. We didn't talk about the heavy stuff anymore. We talked about the silly things. He told me about his dog's irrational fear of squirrels. I told him about the time I accidentally dyed my hair purple. We laughed. We reminisced about old friends, wondering where they were now. It felt like stealing time. It felt like we existed in a bubble, separate from the wedding, separate from our real lives. It was a pocket universe where only David and Elena existed. Eventually, the music from the reception stopped. The guests began to trickle out. We saw car headlights sweeping across the vineyard. I should go, I said. My parking meter isn't running out, but my energy is. I'll walk you to your car, he said. We walked back through the garden, our shoulders brushing occasionally. It was an intimate, comfortable rhythm. We didn't hold hands. We didn't need to. When we reached my car, a sensible SUV filled with potting soil bags in the trunk, he turned to face me. I'm glad I came tonight, he said. I almost didn't. I hate weddings. I'm glad you came too, I said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. He tore out a page and wrote something on it with a silver pen. This is my email, he said. And my number. I looked at the piece of paper. His handwriting hadn't changed. It was still jagged, architectural. David. I started to protest. Keep it, he said. Don't use it if you don't want to. Burn it. Throw it away. But keep it for tonight. Just so you know where I am. I took the paper. My fingers brushed his. I won't use it, I told him gently. I know, he said. But I need to give it to you. For my own peace of mind. So I know I didn't just walk away without leaving a trace this time. I folded the paper and put it in my clutch. Okay. He looked at me for a long moment, memorizing my face. I did the same. I memorized the way the moonlight caught the gray in his beard, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. I wanted to keep this image, Not to cry over, but to cherish. To take out on rainy days and smile at. Goodbye, Elena, he said. Goodbye, David. He leaned in and kissed my cheek. It was a chaste, lingering kiss. Then he turned and walked away. He walked toward the waiting taxi stand, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders hunched slightly against the cold. He didn't look back. I knew he wouldn't. He was a man who understood the dramatic power of an exit. I got into my car. I sat there for a moment in the silence. The leather steering wheel was cold under my hands. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but the tears didn't come. Instead, a strange warmth spread through my chest. I had seen him. The ghost that had haunted the corners of my heart for 25 years had finally taken form, and he wasn't a monster. He wasn't a savior. He was just a man. A lovely, flawed, aging man who had loved me once, and who loved me still, in his own way. I started the car. The engine purred to life. I put on the radio. It was a classic rock station, playing a song we used to listen to in his beat-up Honda Civic. I smiled. The irony was perfect. As I drove out of the vineyard and onto the main road, heading back toward the city, toward my home, toward my life, I felt lighter. The weight of the "what if" was gone. I knew what if. The answer was it would have been beautiful, and it would have been hard, and it wasn't meant to be. We had our season. We had our autumn. And now, I was ready for winter. I was ready for the quiet, cozy comfort of my own life. I thought about the piece of paper in my purse. I knew I wouldn't call him. I wouldn't email him. We wouldn't start a pen-pal romance that would slowly fade into obligation. We would leave it here, perfect and preserved in amber. But I wouldn't throw it away, either. I would put it in the small wooden box on my dresser, where I kept Sophie's baby teeth and Mark's cufflinks. The box of precious things. I merged onto the highway. The city lights twinkled in the distance, welcoming me back. To the ones who got away, I whispered to the empty car, and to the ones who stayed. I turned up the volume and drove home, not looking back. Supplemental reflection. The drive home takes 40 minutes. Usually, I listen to podcasts about gardening or true crime, filling the silence with other people's voices. Tonight, I drove in silence. The radio had been turned off miles ago. I needed the quiet to process the shift in my internal landscape. It's funny how memory works. For years, my memory of David was frozen at age 21. He was eternally wearing a denim jacket, smelling of clove cigarettes, which he smoked to look cool, and cheap coffee. In my mind, he was always arguing about philosophy, always restless, always vibrating with that youthful energy that feels like anxiety and ambition mixed together. That David was gone. The man I met tonight was slower. He listened more than he spoke. He had the heavy, grounded presence of someone who has failed enough times to know that failure isn't fatal. I like this new David. In a different life, in a parallel universe where I hadn't met Mark, where I hadn't built this specific business, where I wasn't so deeply rooted in this soil. Maybe, but maybe, is a dangerous word. It's a thief. It steals the joy of what is. By comparing it to what could be, I thought about Mark. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of missing him. If Mark were here, I would tell him everything. He wouldn't have been jealous. He was too secure for that. He would have held my hand and asked, "Did you get your closure, Elle?" Yes, Mark, I did. Closure isn't a slammed door. It isn't a final argument. Closure is seeing the reality of a person and realizing they no longer hold the key to your happiness. David doesn't hold my key. He never really did. We just held hands for a while as we walked through the dark. I pulled into my driveway. The motion sensor light flickered on, illuminating the front porch. My hydrangeas were drooping a bit. They needed water. The recycling bin was tipped over, probably a raccoon. These were my problems. These were my beautiful, mundane, manageable problems. I walked up the path, righted the bin, and unlocked my front door. The house smelled of lavender and old books. It smelled like home. I went into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. I leaned against the counter, looking out the window at the backyard. I took the piece of paper out of my clutch. I unfolded it one last time. David Thorne, Dfs 44 so D Thorne, Arch, Fs. I ran my thumb over the ink. It was real. He was real. I went upstairs to my bedroom. I opened the small wooden box on my dresser. There was Mark's watch. Sophie's hospital bracelet. A dried rose from my mother's garden. I placed the slip of paper inside. It wasn't a ticket to a new life. It was a bookmark, a marker in the story of my life that said, "Here. This chapter was important. Do not forget it." I closed the box. I changed into my pajamas. Flannel, unglamorous, comfortable. I washed my face, scrubbing away the makeup, the wedding, the years. I looked at myself in the mirror. 48. Lines around the eyes. Softness around the jaw. "You did good, Elena," I told my reflection. I climbed into bed. The sheets were cool. I turned off the lamp. Usually, when I close my eyes, my mind races with to-do lists. Payroll, inventory, Sophie's tuition. Tonight, my mind was quiet. I thought of David on the plane back to London. I hoped he would find someone. Someone who liked old houses and dogs and history. Someone who would make him happy. But mostly, I was just glad he was out there in the world, existing. It is a comfort to know that the people we loved are still walking around, breathing the same air, looking at the same moon. We don't have to own them. We don't have to be with them. We just have to know that they are. I pulled the duvet up to my chin. The storm of 25 years ago had passed. The ground was wet, but the sun would come up in the morning, and I had a garden to tend to. I fell asleep with a smile on my face, dreamless and deep.